Arrow Demo, Part 2, Navigation Buttons. Okay, in this section, what we're going to do here is we're going to look at these navigation buttons right here. Okay, these arrows that we've got going on, forwards and backwards. Okay, so the first one I want to look at is this button right here. This button right here, the next button. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to go to that function. I've got it right up here. So here's our next action button. So let's walk through the code. So first thing we're going to do here is we're going to increment our ArrayList position variable. I'll pause. So we're going to take it to the next box. So now we need to check to see whether or not that this variable is going to stay within the constraints of our ArrayList. Okay, so if our ArrayList is looking something like this, right? So if I'm at number 2, okay, or if I'm at number 1, let's say I'm at number 1, right? So number 1, it's greater than or equal to 0, and it's within the ArrayList size. Okay, it's less than the ArrayList size. Okay, so remember, size is the actual physical number of boxes. So the size is 3. Okay, so I'm up here. We're going to increment the 1. So from here, it's going to make it to 2. That falls within our parameters. That's true. So now what we can do here is pull from that index, that spot, pull the contents out of that spot from our array list. Okay, we need to make sure it's a string, so we're going to say toString because the text field requires a string. Okay, so we're going to set the text. We're going to put the contents of that array list in here. Okay, and then we're going to call up the load position. Okay, now we talked about that a little bit before in the previous section, but basically what that's going to do here is set that text field here. All right, so if it's true, it's within our parameters, we can do that. If it's not, okay, so if I'm right here with our array list, okay, so if I'm sitting at position 2, right, and I increment it to 3, I'm at the very end, right? So what this is going to do is this is going to kick us right back, the -1, right back to this spot right here. So that way it keeps us within the bounds of our array list. Okay, so that's the next button. So let's look at this button right here, the previous button. So we're going to go back one now. So the previous button, the code is almost identical. Okay, so you look right here, we're going to take that variable and we're going to decrement it by 1. Okay, and then we need to check to see if we're within the constraints of the array, right? So here's our array list. Okay, so if I'm sitting at 2 and I decide to go back to this contents of the array list right here, all right, that falls within our constraints. Okay, so that's true. So what are we doing? We're going to go to that position, okay, that index of our array list. We're going to pull the contents out. We're going to make sure it's a string, okay, and we're going to set the text in text field 1. Okay, so we're going to put the contents in here. Then we're going to call load position, and that's going to update our text field here. Otherwise, what we're doing here is we're going to set our position to 0. Okay. So what this is assuming is the fact here is this. If I'm already sitting at this position here, right, I go to decrement it, okay, that would give me a -1, right? So is -1 greater than or less than equal to 0? No, it's not. Okay, that's true, or that makes that false. So we're immediately going to pop it back to here, and that'll keep us at this spot right there. All right, let's move down a little farther here. Let's go to the very first button. So if we want to move to the very first record in our array list, we're going to look at this button right here. move to the first record. This one's quite easy. Okay, so if our array list looks like this, okay, the very first record is position 0. Okay, so that's what we're doing here. We're setting it to position 0. We're getting the contents out of this box here, right? We're going to make sure that it's a string. We're going to store that into set text, and we're going to load that text field right here. And then we're going to update text field to our position right here. Okay? Straightforward, very first record, position 0. All right, now let's look at the last record. Okay, so let's look at this button right here. It follows the same pattern that we just did. Okay, so if we go to the last, basically we're going to my size minus 1, right? So if our array list looks like this, right? Okay, so my size is 3. Okay, so that's the value there is 3, but we actually need to be at this position here of 2. That's why we're doing the minus 1. So that'll put us there at the very end box right here. Then what are we doing? Okay, we're pulling the contents out of the array list, making sure they're a string, setting those sets of text, okay, and putting that text into field 1, and then we're updating our location here for text field 2. All right, so this is going to end part 2, and we've discussed how to use the different arrow buttons or different nav buttons to navigate through our array list. Okay, so the next section that we want to talk about then here is how do we add contents here, and we're going to throw information into our add functions and talk about how this button works. So this ends part 2 of the arrow demonstration.